Wednesday, Rutgers men's basketball adding what we think is the last piece, scholarship piece for the 2025-2026 roster. And Denis Badalau, a Romanian national, played in the top Italian league this past year, 6'8" wing, certainly has some athleticism, can handle the rock, plays with a little bit edge, I think, watching some film, has some bounce to his game, can shoot the ball. Intriguing pickup. Rutgers, I really like the approach to end their roster with the two European pickups, obviously with Zerno and now Badalau. And it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, I think it's Badalau's younger than Zerno. Zerno's 21. Badalau is 19. Did play for the Romanian national team, I think just a couple games, but has a lot of international experience, a lot of FIBA experience. So his age, while I would have preferred Rutgers to pick up a more senior, or I guess an older player, I do think for his age, Badalau has a lot of experience. So, there's, former NBA players that he's played against. So that obviously is a positive. If you know how Badalau and Zerno are going to work out next year in the Big Ten for Rutgers, you either own you own a DeLorean or you're just shooting from the hip. I have no idea how they're going to work out. I think they're intriguing players. If you watch Badalau's film, he can attack the rim. He's almost like a little bit more of a skilled, controlled Jordan Durkak. Was kind of an impression I had. He certainly plays with a similar kind of edge and almost like a little bit of a propeller, in terms of he's a little bit leans forward, looks a little awkward in his pull-up shot at times, and he leaves the ball kind of low, so that could be an issue in Big Ten play. But certainly can play make, and that's what Rutgers needs. I think the biggest glaring need in terms of this roster, or it's not really a need at this point. I don't think they're going to add anyone. The House ruling still has to come down. Technically, well, it's gone back and forth between you're going to have 2 extra scholarships of 15, or is it going to be 13 still? Rutgers is at 13 now. I think the expectation is if there are extra spots, they'll fill them out with walk-ons. But overall, the roster, the biggest thing for me that I see is, proven power, high major scorers, guards. I think the backcourt, leaves a lot to be desired. I think they have a lot of size on the wing now. They have some potential scorers and shooters there. Inside, a lot of question marks there. But when the game's on the line, when you need a basket, when you're trying to stop a kill shot from the other team and stop a run, when you're trying to turn things around, get back into the game, or when you're trying to close out a game, who's this team going to go to? No idea. Now, there's plenty of time to figure that out. But I think that while there's definitely some intriguing ads here, and I think overall, adding Zerno and Badalau here, along with Buchanan, Bay Fall, and of course, Streak Francis, I've said my piece about Francis. I'm not super high on him. I think, again, when you look at the way this roster is built, when you go back and you have JaMychal Davis, Lino Mark, and Tariq Francis in the backcourt, that's 3 smaller guards, 2 of which have proven to be inefficient scorers at the collegiate level. Davis can certainly defend. Francis has not proven yet that he can at this level. And Mark, I'm really high on. I think he's got I think he'd be a real solid player for Rutgers in the long run. But as a true freshman, I think it's asking a lot. I think just those 3 right there, if you're expecting consistent production out of those 3, and then you had, Caden Powers too, who can shoot but is pretty raw, true freshman. They have a lot of potential deficiencies there in the backcourt. Now, wing forward is super intriguing, I think. I really like this group with Zerno and Badalau, Darren Buchanan, the transfer from GW. He was a tremendous freshman year in the A10. Battled some injuries last year, but was still solid. and I think he's a Pikiell type player. He's tough. He's athletic. He's he's physically going to take it to play to opposing teams. And I think he's going to be a good rebounder for his size. Dylan Grant showed a ton of potential as a freshman. Dortch is a lot of spring. Yet remains to be seen how much of a factor he will be next year. But listen, he had a lot of promise coming out of high school. And another year in this program, we'll see where he develops. And then Chris Newley, I think people maybe are sleeping on him a little bit more than they should. Highest rated recruit that they've gotten in this current class. And I think he's going to be a big time contributor for this team. Again, he's a true freshman, but an athletic forward. I think he's going to get big minutes. So I really like the wing forward group. Centers, again, it's a lot of unproven, raw, big body guys. Javante Ware, has shown some promise, but he's a really raw big man, true freshman. Bay Fall, obviously former high school American, has not done much his first 2 years of collegiate action. And then Ibole, coming off the injury, certainly has some size. I think just going back to Badalau and Zerno, Jay Young, per Jerry Carino, was the recruiter here, has been overseas recruiting these guys. And that gives me some serious optimism on these pickups because when Rutgers was, when Steve Pikiell was building this program, and when you go back to the heyday with, Miles Johnson, Ron Harper Jr., Gio, Jay Young was instrumental in building that group. Obviously, he found Miles Johnson when nobody else did. He's been able to develop big men over his career. And I think that his involvement here, him going overseas and finding Badalau, if you go on Twitter, there's a lot of positive things said about him. He's considered one of the top international prospects out there for this class. Virginia was talking to Badalau. I think it was a smaller role, which makes sense. And that's, I think, Rutgers, where they were able to kind of level the playing field with some of these Euro guys. It's maybe they went a little bit higher than some of the offers they got, but also I think they were able to offer bigger roles. Now, is that a good thing? Are these guys ready to come into the Big Ten and be legit starters to be counted on night in and night out? Way too early to know. And that just goes back to kind of the uncertainty of the roster, right? I think there's not many teams that have sure things on their roster. That requires a lot of NIL. That requires, it's just a luxury that not a lot of even top programs have across the board. But I think for Rutgers, the concern here is there's a lot of question marks. There's a lot of what ifs. There's a lot of things that have to go right. And you can say that for any team. A lot of things have to go right for them to have a good year. I think for Rutgers to be competitive, to be in the middle of the pack of the Big Ten, a lot of things have to go right. Again, I'm super high on Chris Newley. I think Badalau and Zerno are really intriguing. I think, they certainly could be the best 2 3-point shooters on the team. How they defend is a big question here. We don't know. Again, Jay Young saw something in them. I think also just in terms of their maturity, their experience playing against older players. I have a tendency to think Euro guys that kind of come in with a little bit more natural toughness, just in terms of how they've, in terms of playing against older players, playing ball for a long time in their lives, and not taking anything for granted. So I think I like that aspect of it. And I think in terms of how this roster develops, there's certainly potential there, but there's a lot of clay you have to mold. And I think that it's too early to know. If you're concerned, if you're not quite sure how it's gonna kind of fill out, I'm with you. I see it that way too. In terms of the overall vision of the roster, I think it's a little bit disjointed. Again, I go back to the backcourt because I think the backcourt is so small. And when you're going to have to be a defensive first team in the Big Ten, and the way Pikiell has traditionally, had his success is with big backcourts. So I think it's going to be interesting to see what they do defensively. How much do they switch defensively in terms of different looks? how much are they going to press this year? In terms of trapping, I mean, having smaller guards can be an issue in terms of trapping. Obviously, they could be disruptive on-ball defense, being frisky, getting, with quick hands, getting steals, but not as much in terms of, in the past. And obviously, Caleb McConnell was the best defensive player Pikiell's had, but these are guys that, like their wings, right? Their wings are there in terms of their wingspan, their athleticism, their ability to get into passing lanes. That's going to be key. But then again, it just goes back to the backcourt where if the backcourt was composed differently, I would be more high in this team. I think that the way it's currently constructed, I have some major concerns there. If Bayfall and Igbole can be serviceable in terms of their rim defense, in terms of their rebounding, you really don't, you can't expect too much in terms of scoring production. But I think if they can be solid on the floor, foul trouble is concerned with both of them. I think Javonte Ware, again, I like his ceiling, but I don't think he's necessarily going to be ready to be a factor this year. So it really comes down to Zerno, Badalau, Buchanan, Grant, Newly. Those 5 wings, I mean, how much are they going to be able to balance those time? Again, Dortch is a little bit of a flyer there. Maybe he becomes a factor. But that's a lot of wings. And maybe, listen, maybe that means of that backcourt, only one is on the court at one time, which, would be a benefit based on having 3 guys that are pretty small. So whether it's Mark, Davis, or Francis, essentially kind of keyed in that point guard role. And then are you playing 3 wings at all times? With Zerno, Badalau, Buchanan, Grant, Newly, kind of mix and match. Again, I like the potential of that group, but it's going to be interesting to see the dynamic on the court, how that looks defensively, how Pikiell's able to kind of define roles with those players. I think of your scorers, who's going to score for this team? Zerno and Badalau definitely have to. Buchanan definitely has to. Grant, can he take the next step? Newly, I think, looking at it, I think Newly has a huge opportunity here. And I think, yes, after last year, we could all be concerned about a freshman taking the lead spot on this team when you have Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper, likely number 2 and number 3 draft picks. And obviously it didn't work out well based on how the team was built around them. But I think, again, how Pikiell is able to get the most out of this team, the roster on the face of it, I think there's some intriguing pieces. I don't think it's in terms of fit. I think it's going to be a wait and see, and I think how they develop. I mean, Jermichael Davis, listen, he's entering his 3rd year. He's proven to be a guy that's can play under control, that can look for his teammates, that can have a high assist, low turnover rate. He's not a proven playmaker. He's not a proven shot maker. He is good defensively. If he can build offensively, be more consistent, and really kind of be a facilitator for this offense, kind of take that next step to be a 25, 30-minute guy and be a starting point guard, then, I feel better about things. I think it's possible. I don't think it's a sure thing by any stretch. Lino Mark, the staff's super high on. How ready can he be? Can Francis, if it's a roll off the bench, can he be that microwave type player and come in and score in bunches? Can he hold up defensively? Again, just at 6 feet, pretty inconsistent and inefficient as a scorer at the low D1 level. So again, concerns there. Zerno and Badalau certainly have shown potential on film in terms of, being able to knock down shots. Badalau is definitely more athletic, more of an attacking player than Zerno. 6'7", 6'8". Both of these guys need to add some muscle. But Badalau, listen, you got to watch his tape, check it out on Twitter or YouTube, and he's an intriguing player. I think, again, there's been questions about, the competition. But with him, I mean, I don't think there's a lot of questions. He was in the top Italian league. He's played for the Romanian national team. He's played against former NBA players. He's only 18, 19 years old. He's on the younger side, but for his age, he's got a ton of experience. And, I kind of like his, I wouldn't say he's the smoothest first step, but he plays with some bounce. He plays with some edge. He's physical, and he certainly has some athleticism. So I think he is a player that's going to be fun to watch. And he's going to be aggressive, but he did also play under control in a lot of the footage I watched. So, um, overall, I really like the pickup. I think in the context of the offseason, it's too early to grade. Again, there's a lot of question marks here. And, I certainly want to hope for the best here. And I think, what's the ceiling for this team? I think middle of the pack, competing for an NCAA bid. But I think the floors could be low. Things could not work out in a pretty grand way. I think, NIL is a big part of that, just in terms of the limited resources they had. Obviously, you don't have an AD, you don't have a GM, you don't have a big NIL. So I like the way the staff got creative here, went to Europe and finished out the roster with the last two spots with Zerno and Badalau. I almost feel like I don't know if that was a mid off season adjustment, if that was always kind of the plan. But I kind of feel I wish maybe they shifted to that a little bit earlier. Maybe went a little bit deeper than just the two. But I've talked about fall. I think could be solid. Not a automatic starter, legit big man yet. But I think that on scratching the surface, they can, again, going back to Jay Young, he just gives me confidence based on his track record, based on his history at Rutgers, based on his history as an assistant under Pikiell at Stony Brook. He can recruit players, he can develop players. They're going to need his fingerprints on this whole team, and I think that that is a reason that gives me optimism for this team, that they can get the most out of this team. Again, a lot of it I think depends on Buchanan being able to kind of get back to his old self. Can Grant take the next step? Can Zerno and Badalau be ready in November versus February? Are they ready to make that leap? Can you get some consistency out of the backcourt at point guard in terms of assists and limiting turnovers, in terms of running the offense, getting players involved, holding their own defensively? A lot of question marks in the backcourt, a lot of question marks up front. Can Fall and Egbole stay on the court and stay out of foul trouble? Can they defend the rim much better than Rutgers did last year? And then it really comes down to the wings being the scorers. Can they have at least two guys shoot over 35% from three? You have some guys that can attack the rim, but you got to space the floor. You got to open the lane up by having some shooters too. So, overall, I think Rutgers certainly finished much better than they started, in my opinion, in the transfer portal and adding to the freshman class. But there's not a lot of proven P4 commodities on the roster. And there wasn't last year either. And it didn't go very well. And you're losing two of the top three picks in the draft on this team. So it's completely fair to be skeptical. It's completely fair to be concerned. Again, I like how the staff kind of regrouped and finished this out. But they're very freshman reliant. They have a very small backcourt. They're gonna be reliant on their defense to keep them in games, to win them games, 60 to 56. If they get in a shootout in the 70s, it's going to be very hard to win. And that is kind of a throwback to Pikiell's old teams, but at the same time, it's a little disappointing that they may kind of have to take another step back into that realm where it's like, you're winning games in the 50s and 60s. And again, a big part of it is the lack of NIL funds. That has to be kind of part of your overall judgment of Pikiell here. There's a long way to go. So overall, I think Rutgers is now done building their roster for the 25-26 season. This team will report in mid-June. They're about a month out. They're going to have lots of strength and conditioning opportunities. They're going to have summer practice. Then you get into fall preseason camp. So there's plenty of development time ahead. I think that, this staff has done a good job of going back to, players that they can develop. Again, it's a one-year team. now. But I think Euro guys are typically pretty coachable as well. Buchanan is definitely a program guy, fits the T. I think Fall is hungry for minutes. Newley's going to come in with kind of high expectations for himself. And I think overall the group seems pretty coachable. I think, they're have the ability to kind of develop some chemistry here in the offseason. The team building is so important now with so much turnover on the roster. But again, don't love how many freshmen they have, and don't love the small backcourt. But love the wings. I think there's a lot of potential there. Who will develop as their top three scorers? Who will be those consistent scorers for this team? Are they able to hit enough threes to open up things down low? Can they, there's certain things that this team's going to have to do well to kind of shift the balance, right? And that's getting to the foul line a lot and converting. That's being disruptive on the defensive end, forcing turnovers, being able to create offense off of their defense, and overall, I think just in terms of this, I think one of the most disappointing things for Rutgers basketball for me in the recent years is the lack of edge they've had, the lack of toughness on the court. Can they get back to that style? There's a little bit more of a blue collar team, so maybe they can. And again, I go back to Jay Young being more involved now. I think that's so important, just in terms of Steve Pikiell's makeup as a coach. Jay Young is a big part of that identity. So the fact that he went overseas, he found Zerno, he found Badalau. He's going to have an opportunity to mentor these big guys, get the most out of Fall. Can he tap into that keg? We'll see. A lot of question marks here. More to come. I'll have a space as soon to, have fans on to talk about this team. I'll have plenty of assessing of the roster as well. I'll have some guests soon also. So thanks so much for listening and watching once again here at the Scarlet Faithful podcast.